And welcome back to chapter 15. This is part 2. So, with all that said, we go into hegemony. And when I'm done with this slide, you might want to pause it and watch the 2 videos that should be under the helpful tab. Just saying, they are very good and very helpful in really explaining hegemony and should give you some extra incentives to explain this kind of stuff. But anyway, when discussing culture and power, it is also useful to make a distinction between material power and hegemony. So material power refers to more traditional signs of power. These are political, economic, or material. Such power is exerted through coercion or brute force. Hegemony refers to the power to create consent and agreement within a population without the use or threat of force. Now, Antonio Gramsci is the one who came up with this notion of hegemony. And he said that the state puts ideas in our heads through different means by making things normative and seem normative that we wouldn't otherwise do. See, he was part of the Communist Party of Italy and opposed Mussolini. Mussolini ended up putting him in jail where he wrote the prison notebooks, where this theory comes from. It is 3,000 pages of his ideology about why we do the things we do. But there are 2 really good videos that I would like for you to watch. The first one is 10-minute philosophy. And you don't need to go into the Bourdieu part of it. So it's only 7 minutes, not really 10 or 11 minutes long. And then the second one, I'm very sorry to say, is going to kill any love for Disney, most likely. It goes in and talks about how hegemony works as far as toxic masculinity is concerned. So once you have watched those videos, kind of think about the issues that the narrators bring up. Have you put up a Christmas tree, a fake pine tree? Why is it a pine tree or a fir or something like that? Or why not a palm tree? And so on and so forth. So it's kind of interesting when you think about it. But anyway. So, gender and political power. In a growing number of societies, women exercise leadership as well as political power. This is something that has come back around full circle. Matrilineal, or tracing one's descent through the matrilineal line, and the females having a lot of control, was something that we see that happened in prehistoric time. However, patrialism, doing things via the father side, has become much more common as inheritance is easier to trace if you're patrilineal. Anyway, there are other forms that have it so that women have very little formal recognized power, but are able to assert their power in various types of what we call informal power. So informal power, a very good example of this is in Papua New Guinea. An abused or shamed woman's act of revenge suicide shifts the burden of shame to her abuser and can even motivate the victim's relatives to seek violent revenge. So she uses her death in order to assert her power and get justice done. So, political power in non-state societies. In non-state societies, leadership tends to be temporary, informal, and based on personal attributes rather than heredity or ranking. For example, the power of an Amazonian headman is based on his personal charisma and persuasiveness. Such leaders are sometimes called big men and cannot transform their status and power through inheritance when they die. A very good example of this is Anka's Big Mocha, and I will have a link to it. It is my all-time favorite anthropological documentary. It is old, but it's a good one, I think. So, political power in state societies. Power in states and chiefdoms is controlled by officials and hierarchical institutions. Formalized laws determine who may hold office for how long and the power that may be legitimately wielded by an official. When we look at this, it's very easy to look at the United States laws and like our term limits and that kind of thing. Nation states. These are independent states recognized by other states, composed of people who share a single national identity. Most contemporary bands, tribes, or chiefdoms exist within geographical borders of a state. I should also say that bands, tribes, and chiefdoms there aren't very many of them any longer. We believe that, especially with the bands and tribes, egalitarian societies, there are only roughly 250,000 people still living in that kind of lifestyle. States employ many forms of control over their populations, from surveillance of their actions and activities such as like terror and genocide. Post-colonial states. Now, we know that many of the world's people live in nation states that are formed by conquest and colonialism. Good examples are Native Americans, Australian Aborigines, and Amazonian natives. These people were conquered and became ethnic minorities within their own territories, which is just sad. How is social inequality constructed as well as upheld? Most Americans assume that social inequalities are based on categories like race, class, ethnicity, gender, caste, etc., and are a natural and inevitable aspect of human society. And while they may feel real, powerful, and unchangeable, there is nothing fixed or inevitable about them. All social hierarchies appeal to the natural order to justify the rankings and categories assigned to different groups. This is where hegemony comes into play and makes it seem very normal and natural. But it really isn't. For most of humanity, up until much more recently, like the past couple thousand years, almost all of the 150,000 years that that Homo sapiens have been on this planet, we've lived in egalitarian type societies. And so, yeah, just something to think about. Anyway, this is the end of part 2. Please make sure you watch those videos. And Anka's Big Mocha is really great. So try to watch that too. Anyway, see you for part 3. Cheers.